Most people who are doing everything right financially still feel like they are falling behind. Not because their numbers are wrong. The spreadsheet works. The retirement calculator shows compound growth on schedule. The emergency fund exists. But the feeling does not match the progress. And here is what nobody tells you. That mismatch is not a bug in your psychology. It is not something you need to fix with gratitude journaling or perspective shifts. It is structural. It is how financial progress actually works at the income level where you are no longer surviving, but not yet wealthy enough to stop thinking about it. This is the space where most advice breaks down, because the advice is designed for a different problem. Financial progress, as it is commonly described, follows a clean narrative. You earn more. You save more. Your net worth compounds. Over time, pressure decreases. You feel more secure. The math delivers emotional relief. That is the model. But the model assumes your internal experience scales linearly with your balance sheet. It does not account for what actually happens when you move from $60,000 to $95,000, or when your net worth crosses $100,000 for the first time, or when you are finally, objectively, ahead of where you were 5 years ago. What actually happens is more complicated. You expected relief. What you got was a different kind of pressure, not the pressure of scarcity. You are past that. But the pressure of optimization, the awareness that you now have enough runway to make meaningful mistakes, enough visibility into the future to see all the ways you could be doing this better, faster, more efficiently. When you had less, the decisions were simpler. Survive, build the foundation, get stable. Now the decisions are murkier. You are choosing between good options with unclear trade-offs. You are watching other people make different choices and wondering if their path compounds better than yours. You are aware that time is finite, and every financial decision is also a referendum on what kind of life you are building. This is the part most people miss. Financial progress does not feel like relief. It feels like exposure. Exposure to new problems you could not see from the previous level. Let me give you a framework for this. There is a concept in psychology called the hedonic treadmill. The idea that people adapt to positive changes and return to a baseline level of happiness. That is part of what is happening here. But it is not the whole picture. What is actually happening is constraint migration. When you have $5,000 in savings, your constraint is liquidity, one emergency, one unexpected expense, and you are back to zero. So you focus on building the buffer. And eventually, you do. You get to 15,000, then 25,000. The liquidity constraint lifts, but a new constraint appears. Now it is asset allocation. You have enough cash that inflation is eating it. You are aware you should be investing, but you are not sure how much, or where, or whether this is the right time. The old problem is solved. The new problem is more complex. You solve that one too. You automate investments. You build a reasonable portfolio. Your net worth grows. And then the constraint becomes optionality. You have enough saved that you could take a year off, or switch careers, or move cities. But you do not know if you should. The freedom you thought you were building toward now feels like a set of high-stakes decisions you are not sure how to evaluate. This is why people at $200,000 net worth often feel just as uncertain as they did at 20,000. The game did not end. The constraints just migrated. And here is the uncomfortable part. Every level of financial progress introduces psychological complexity that was not visible from below. When you are building your first 50,000, you think the hard part is discipline. Just save, just invest, just stay consistent. But once you are there, you realize discipline was the easy part. The hard part is navigating ambiguity, deciding what is worth optimizing and what is worth ignoring. Learning to hold tension between competing goods, security versus opportunity, present comfort versus future optionality, your plan versus other people's. Progress did not simplify your life. It made your decisions harder. Let us go deeper. There is a specific kind of trap that happens in the 75,000 to 150,000 income range. And almost nobody talks about it. You are earning enough that your life looks stable. Good job, good income. You are saving. You are investing. Externally, you are doing fine. But internally, you are running two parallel simulations at all times. Simulation 1. What happens if this continues? Simulation 2. What happens if this falls apart? And both feel equally plausible. Because here is what nobody tells you about this income level. You are just far enough from the edge that you can see how far you could fall. When you were earning 45,000, financial fragility was immediate. You could not think 5 years out because next month mattered more. But now you can see the whole map. You can see that if you lost your job, your savings would cover 6 months, maybe 9. Then what? You would have to liquidate investments, probably at the wrong time. You would have to move, downsize, start over in some way. You are not fragile the way you used to be. But you are aware of exactly how many decisions separate you from fragility. And that awareness does not feel like security. It feels like vigilance. This is the part where people start optimizing everything. Because optimization feels like control. You refinance the mortgage. You adjust your asset allocation. You run the retirement calculators obsessively, tweaking assumptions, stress testing scenarios. And none of it is wrong. It is all technically sound. But it is also a way of managing the anxiety that comes from realizing your financial stability is more conditional than you thought. This is what financial progress actually feels like for most people. Not relief, conditional stability that requires active maintenance. Now let us talk about the social dimension, because this is where it gets even more distorted. You reach a certain income level, and suddenly you are around people who earn more than you. This is almost inevitable. Your peer group recalibrates. Your co-workers, your friends, the people in your industry, they are all in a similar range, and many are ahead. And here is the trick your brain plays on you. You stop comparing yourself to your past self. You start comparing yourself to your current peer group. 5 years ago, you would have been thrilled to be where you are now. But you are not comparing to 5 years ago. You are comparing to the person who just bought a house in a better neighborhood, or who is taking 2 international trips this year. or whose partner also has a high income, which effectively doubles their household financial capacity. You are doing well, objectively. But you do not feel like you are doing well, because your reference point shifted. And the insidious part is that this shift feels like information. It feels like you are seeing reality more clearly now. You are realizing that what you thought was ahead is actually just keeping up. But that is not what is happening. What is happening is that your brain is optimizing for relative status within an increasingly narrow comparison set and calling it financial progress. This is why people who earn $120,000 often feel the same financial pressure as people who earn $70,000. Because the pressure is not about the absolute number. It is about the gap between what you have and what your revised peer group has. And the gap never closes, because your peer group keeps recalibrating. You cannot budget your way out of this. You cannot optimize your way out of it. The only way out is to notice it is happening and consciously choose a different reference point. Let us talk about identity, because this is where financial progress gets deeply personal. For a lot of people, especially people who take this seriously, there is a quiet identity that forms around being the person who is doing it right. You are the one who reads the books, who understands compound interest, who has a plan, and that identity feels good. It feels like maturity, responsibility, self-respect. But it also creates a trap, because once your identity is built around being financially competent, any deviation from the plan feels like an identity threat. You overspend 1 month. That is not just a budget variance. That is evidence you are not who you thought you were. Your portfolio underperforms. That is not just market volatility. That is a question mark next to your decision making. You take a career risk that does not pan out. That is not just a setback. It is a crack in the story you have been telling yourself about being someone who makes smart moves. And here is the second-order consequence. You start making decisions to protect the identity, not to optimize the outcome. You stay in a job that is stable but draining, because leaving would feel reckless, and you are not a reckless person. You do not take the sabbatical, even though you could afford it, because it does not fit the narrative of relentless compound growth. You avoid risks that are actually well calibrated, because your identity is built around being the person who does not need to take risks. This is how financial progress traps you. Not because you are failing, but because you are succeeding in a way that calcifies your options. And then there is the thing nobody talks about: the loneliness of financial progress at this level. When you are struggling, there is a shared language. Everyone understands, I cannot afford that. It is simple. It is clear. It requires no explanation. But when you are doing okay, when you are objectively fine, but still feel uncertain, the language breaks down. You cannot really talk about it. Because to most people, it sounds like complaining about a good problem. And maybe it is. But it is still a problem. You cannot say, I am stressed about whether I am optimizing my tax-advantaged accounts correctly. Without sounding out of touch, you cannot say, I am anxious about whether I should coast at this job or push for the next level. and I do not know which version of my future self I am betraying either way. Without sounding privileged. So you just do not talk about it. And the silence makes it feel like you are the only one experiencing this. Like everyone else has it figured out. Like you are the only person at your income level who still feels uncertain. But you are not. This is what financial progress feels like for almost everyone at this level. It is just that nobody has the language for it. So it stays internal. Here is what happens over the long term if you do not reckon with this. You keep progressing. The numbers keep improving. Your net worth grows. Your income grows. Externally, everything looks better, but internally, the pressure does not decrease. It metastasizes. Because the thing you are actually optimizing for is not financial security. It is certainty. And certainty does not exist. Not at 100,000 net worth, not at 500,000, not at 2 million. Every level introduces new uncertainty, new variables, new ways the plan could break. And if you are not careful, you spend decades climbing a ladder that never delivers the feeling you thought it would. You retire with enough, maybe more than enough. But the vigilance never turned off. The simulation never stopped running. You got to the end without ever feeling like you arrived. This is the second-order consequence people do not see coming. Not financial failure. Financial success that still feels like conditional survival. So what do you do with this? I am not going to give you steps. Because steps imply there is a solution. And I am not sure there is one. Not in the way we usually think about solutions. But there is a reorientation. A different way of holding this. The first thing is to stop expecting progress to feel like relief. It will not. Not sustainably. Not at this level. Progress feels like new complexity. That is not a bug. That is what it is. The second thing is to notice when you are optimizing for certainty instead of for life. Because certainty is expensive. It costs you time, energy, flexibility, and often the very experiences that make the wealth meaningful. The third thing, and this is the hardest one, is to build a different relationship with the vigilance. The vigilance is not wrong. It is not something you need to eliminate. It kept you safe. It got you here. But it does not need to be the only voice. You can acknowledge the simulation running in the background. The one that is always calculating downside risk. And still make decisions from a different place. A place that recognizes you have built something real. Even if it is not permanent. Even if it requires maintenance. This is the shift. Not from uncertainty to certainty. But from resisting the uncertainty to recognizing it as the actual texture of financial life at this level. Most people misunderstand what financial progress feels like because they are expecting a finish line. They are expecting the pressure to lift. They are expecting the math to eventually deliver peace. But financial progress at this level is not about reaching a place where you stop thinking about it. It is about learning to hold complexity without letting it consume you. It is about recognizing that the vigilance is real. The trade-offs are real. The social distortion is real, and that recognizing them does not make them go away. But it does make them less totalizing. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are just in the part of the map where progress stops feeling like progress. And now you know what that is.